are kids in the room, you might want to just put them on an iPad for a second, because
Put their headphones
parents,
on.
we're trying to protect our child's innocence for as long as we can.
Yeah.
We're all desperate to do that. But pornography has become so highly accessible online, it's even marketed to young children.
Yeah, a shocking new report found nearly half of Aussie boys have seen porn by the age of 13 and almost half of girls by 15, changing their attitudes and behaviours towards sex. A parenting expert, Dr. Justin Coulson, joins us from the Sunshine Coast to discuss this. Justin, it's such an important issue and that's why we need to start talking about it more. Are you shocked by these statistics?
I wish I was, but these numbers have been more or less consistent for the last several years. It kind of depends on which study you're looking at, Belinda, as to whether or not the numbers are higher or lower. I mean, there's some data that says that 99% of our 15-year-old boys have consumed pornography, often intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, and adolescent boys in a lot of data are showing up as the #1 consumers globally of explicit content.
So what impact is that having on our kids?
Okay, so there's a couple of things here, and I'll try not to get too much into the weeds. First off, here's what we can tell. When it comes to pornography, kids who are watching explicit sexual content, what it does is it tells them what to believe, what to expect about their sexual engagement, sexual activity. I mean, they're watching this often without ever having held hands or kissed. But if they have an expectation, when they are old enough or when they finally have the opportunity to be involved that way, not only does it change their expectation, but therefore it changes the way that they behave. And because there's a lot of ethical challenges when it comes to running scientific studies around a topic like this, it can be a little bit tricky to disentangle what's really going on. But while we don't have a lot of Australian data, there's some pretty good data from around the world. The United Kingdom's Children's Commissioner has just in the last week or two published a major report. It's titled Evidence on Pornography's Influence on Harmful Sexual Behaviour Among Children. And here's what they found in that. They found that the average age of viewing explicit content is around about 13, but 10% of our kids have seen it by the age of 9. They also found that kids feel pressured to watch it, even if they don't want to, because they know it's degrading, but all their friends are saying, come on, check this out. And this is the thing, age of first exposure absolutely predicts the frequency of use and exposure in later years. I think the biggest thing to highlight, though, is that pornography shapes and fuels violence against women and girls. That is, not everyone who watches pornography is going to become a sex offender, but almost everyone who is involved in sex offences has viewed pornography because of the way it changes attitudes, beliefs, and then behaviours.
So, I guess
this is normal.
And this is why I wanted to bring this topic up with you, Justin, because as a parent, I've got a nearly teenager. I've got 2 8-year-olds. And, you know, the Herald and The Age last week did an incredible run of stories about this. But I was like, well, what age do I start having this conversation? 13, I know I need to have that. But, like, 8-year-olds, and I have a daughter too, how do you say this stuff? You don't want to take away their innocence at the same time, but you've got to be in front of it.
It's heartbreaking, David. I mean, it's genuinely heartbreaking. I've got 6 daughters. I don't want to have to talk to them about this stuff. Here's what the very best research and the very best, I guess, practical advice would be. Number 1, start the conversations early and have them often. And when I say early, I'm going to suggest when we're talking about pornography itself, explicit content, you want to start the conversations around about somewhere between 8 and 11, unless you have good reason to think that you need to start younger. For younger kids, though, you're not going to say pornography, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to go hard at it. What you're going to do instead is you're going to talk about the idea of good pictures and bad pictures on the internet. And you might even say, have you got any idea what I'm talking about? What would be an example of a good picture and a bad picture? And you can bring the concept of nudity in as you're having that gentle conversation. With older kids, I can guarantee you, even if they haven't been exposed to it, even unintentionally, by the time they're 10, 11, 12, they know what it is. There are kids in the playground that are talking about it. So you ask them, what do you know? What's your understanding? Encourage them to always tell an adult if they're exposed to it, and never, ever, 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 ever get them in trouble if they come to you and say, hey, here's what happened.
How can parents stay across this and know, you know, what to do, not just how to talk about it with the kids, but stay across this?
Belinda, it's so hard because, like, as parents, we're supposed to be across everything, right? And we can't be across everything. So here's what I would suggest, rather than trying to be across pornography and across whatever else is on the list of things parents are supposed to be across. Number 1, develop really strong connections with your kids. Because if you've got the strong connections, then you're able to talk early, and talk often. You want to minimize the fear of punishment and be open and honest and stay curious about their lives without being furious about what could go wrong.
So last week, the consent education was given $3.5 million boost. That's going to help sex education in Australia. Is that enough?
I don't know that it's about money. I think it's about how effective the consent education is. And David, I'm going to be really blunt. I think that most consent education that's happening in Australia is mostly ineffective. There's a whole lot of consent providers who have popped up all over the place now that government money is available. People are taking advantage of it, and many of them, unfortunately, have no training, they have no qualifications, they don't have relevant backgrounds. Some of them are even spreading harmful messages. I've seen them on the social media channels that they've got out there, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? The government's approach is, I think, a Band-Aid approach, so it looks like they're doing something, but I'm absolutely certain that it lacks any kind of an evidence base. It's not money well spent, and I don't think that it's going to move the needle in a meaningful way. We've got to do it so much better than what they're trying to do right now.
What does need to be done then, in your opinion?
Well, for a start, we've got to make families stronger and get parents involved. I mean, it's not up to the education system to teach kids. So parents have got to be involved with their kids and doing things like having limits, having conversations. When the kids go to a party, make the phone call, drop them off at the door, find out what sort of supervision will be there, whether there'll be alcohol. Having the conversations with the kids and letting the kids know that they're safe to come to you. That's at the heart of it. And then having evidence-based consent education in schools that is run by reputable providers is going to be a second really important pillar in this fight.
And try and keep your relationship with your teenager intact at the same time. Because if you're going to turn up to that party, they're not going to be too happy about that, are they?
I feel no better about this conversation, Just. I feel like I've just had the porn talk with you. Yeah. But I appreciate it, and we all appreciate the advice. Thanks, mate. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my God, Carl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports, and amazing Aussie stories.
And Carl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
That never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?
Always happens.